Now, let's drift off to sleep. Today, you'll be falling asleep during a thunderstorm inside of a cozy camper trailer next to a lake in the mountains. Imagine you are feeling exhausted, hot, and sweaty as you return to your camper. You've just conquered your long-held dream of hiking to the very summit of Moonrest Mountain. You've changed into your swimsuit and are now standing at the edge of the dock on weary, trembling legs, ready to celebrate your incredible achievement with a refreshing dive into the cool, crystal-clear waters of Silver Lake. With your arms raised above your head and ready to dive in, you glance at the slow-moving dark clouds on the horizon. Beads of sweat are still clinging to your forehead when you push off the dock and soar through the air before gliding perfectly into the water. The crisp, cool water envelops you, gently massaging your entire being. You can almost taste the clean, mineral freshness of the water as it washes away all the sweat, dust, and grime from your skin. While breathing in deeply, you are met with the glorious sense of renewal. You feel utterly refreshed and rejuvenated. You swim back to the dock and climb the cool aluminum ladder. Then, standing there with a soft cotton towel draped around your shoulders, you gaze out across the deep blue lake. Here and there, motorboats, canoes, sailboats, and jet skis are now headed towards the shores. Everyone knows rain is coming. Kids wearing life vests and learning how to water ski are hoisted back into boats, and the small, colorful sails of dinghies flutter in the breeze as their little suntanned captains point them back towards land. Now, all toweled off and feeling a little bit chilled, you walk barefoot back to your camper ahead of the rain. At the little picnic table, you collect your book, coffee mug, and sunglasses. You gather up other items and place them into a plastic tote. A salt and pepper shaker, a box of wooden matches, some paper plates. You secure the lid on the tote and move the Coleman lantern under the table. At the fire pit, you fold up your camping chair and tuck it below the protective cover of a tall ponderosa pine. Then you return to your camper, open the door, and step inside. In the little kitchenette, you set water to boil for tea. And then you change into your favorite, coziest leisure wear. while the hot tea steeps, you settle at the quaint table and gaze out the window, watching as boats reach the shore and families hurry off to their campers and tents and cabins. Now, with a warm cup of tea in hand and nestled in your soft, comfy clothes, you feel your body slowly warming again. You bring the mug to your lips. The fragrant steam curls around your face as you take a tiny sip. The tea is smooth, rich, and the perfect temperature. You take a bigger sip, and the tea flows down to your core, melting away the chill from the lake. A rush of warmth spreads throughout your body, like a wave of little goosebumps, and you're suddenly filled with a sense of deep accomplishment, peace, and satisfaction. Now, as you sit here at Silver Lake, let's prepare for sleep. First, close your eyes and simply become aware of your breathing, feeling your chest gently rise and fall again. Next, let's take a few deeper breaths. We will slowly fill our lungs with the cool, sweet scent of pine trees and that fresh mountain air. And then, after holding briefly, we will let it all go and exhale. Ready? Breathe in deeply, hold for 3, 2, 1, and then exhale. One more time. Breathe in deeply, hold for 3, 2, 1, and exhale. And try thinking to yourself, as I am here at Silver Lake, I can feel gravity pulling me back towards Earth. With every exhale, I can feel the slow rotation of Earth and the Earth's steady movement around the sun. I can feel my tired feet, my ankles, my fatigued calves, my knees, and my legs becoming heavier and heavier and more relaxed. You finish the last sip of your perfect tea, and then you pick up a little pencil and notebook resting on the table. With them in hand, you make your way to the sleeping nook at the other end of the camper, where you collapse heavily into the soft, wide bed. After the long, steep hike up Moonrest Mountain, the bed feels like a soft cloud beneath your tired body. The little windows by the bed are cracked open, and your nostrils catch the pleasant scent of fresh rain on pine needles and moss. You look at your notepad and observe your to-do list. Each completed task is neatly crossed out with pencil. At the bottom of the page is one final entry on this list. A smile creeps across your face as you take the pencil and begin scribbling over that last item: climb Moonrest Mountain. You set the notepad aside, thinking how perfect everything feels at this moment. You've completed everything you set out to do here. Tomorrow holds no obligations, and for now, everything is done, finished, and complete. You have earned this wonderful moment of absolute peace. Your body sinks deeper into the soft bed. Every muscle relaxes from the tips of your fingers to the soles of your tired feet as you surrender to the peace and calm and take in the rich mountain air. Let's take a few more deep breaths before drifting off to sleep. Ready? Breathe in deeply, hold for 3, 2, 1, and then exhale. One more time. Breathe in deeply, hold for 3, 2, 1, and exhale. Try thinking to yourself, as I lay here at Silver Lake, I can feel gravity pulling me back towards Earth. With every exhale, I experience my body feeling heavier and heavier and more relaxed. I can feel my tired arms, my hands, my torso, shoulders, neck, and head becoming heavier and more relaxed. My whole body feels at peace as gravity's pull tugs me gently and tucks me safely into this ever so soft bed. Now, feeling oh so satisfied, safe, accomplished, rejuvenated, sleepy, and happy, you reach over to a little transistor radio, tune it to your favorite station, then lay back and close your eyes.
Loss of the steamship Titanic. Report of a formal investigation into the circumstances attending the foundering on April 15, 1912 of the British steamship Titanic of Liverpool after striking ice in or near latitude 41 degrees 46 minutes north, longitude 50 degrees 14 minutes west, North Atlantic Ocean, whereby loss of life ensued. Structure. The vessel was built throughout of steel and had a cellular double bottom of the usual type, with a floor at every frame, its depth at the center line being 63 inches, except in way of the reciprocating machinery, where it was 78 inches. For about half of the length of the vessel, this double bottom extended up the ship's side to a height of 7 feet above the keel. forward and aft of the machinery space, the protection of the inner bottom extended to a less height above the keel. It was so divided that there were 4 separate watertight compartments in the breadth of the vessel. Before and abaft the machinery space, there was a watertight division at the center line only, except in the foremost and aftermost tanks. Above the double bottom, the vessel was constructed of the usual transverse frame system, reinforced by web frames which extended to the highest decks. At the forward end, the framing and plating was strengthened with a view to preventing panting and damage when meeting thin harbor ice. Beams were fitted on every frame at all decks from the boat deck downward. An external bilge keel about 300 feet long and 25 inches deep was fitted along the bilge amidships. The heavy ship's plating was carried right up to the boat deck, and between the C and B decks was doubled. The stringer or edge plate of the B deck was also doubled. This double plating was hydraulic riveted. All decks were steel plated throughout. The transverse strength of the ship was in part dependent on the 15 transverse watertight bulkheads, which were specially stiffened and strengthened to enable them to stand the necessary pressure in the event of accident, and they were connected by double angles to decks, inner bottom, and shell plating. The 2 decks above the B deck were of comparatively light scantling, but strong enough to ensure their proving satisfactory in these positions in rough weather. Watertight subdivision. In the preparation of the design of this vessel, it was arranged that the bulkheads and divisions should be so placed that the ship would remain afloat in the event of any 2 adjoining compartments being flooded, and that they should be so built and strengthened that the ship would remain afloat under this condition. The minimum freeboard that the vessel would have in the event of any 2 compartments being flooded was between 2 feet 6 inches and 3 feet from the deck, adjoining the top of the watertight bulkheads. With this object in view, 15 watertight bulkheads were arranged in the vessel. The lower part of C bulkhead was doubled and was in the form of a cofferdam. So far as possible, the bulkheads were carried up in one plane to their upper sides, but in cases where they had for any reason to be stepped forward or aft, the deck, in way of the step, was made into a watertight flat, thus completing the watertightness of the compartment. In addition to this, G deck in the after peak was made a watertight flat. The orlop deck between bulkheads which formed the top of the tunnel was also watertight. The orlop deck in the forepeak tank was also a watertight flat. The electric machinery compartment was further protected by a structure some distance in from the ship's side, forming 6 separate watertight compartments, which were used for the storage of fresh water. Where openings were required for the working of the ship, in these watertight bulkheads, they were closed by watertight sliding doors which could be worked from a position above the top of the watertight bulkhead, and those doors immediately above the inner bottom were of a special automatic closing pattern, as described below. By this subdivision, there were in all 73 compartments, 29 of these being above the inner bottom. Watertight doors. The doors, 12 in number, immediately above the inner bottom, were in the engine and boiler room spaces. They were of Messrs. Harland and Wolff's latest type, working vertically. The door plate was of cast iron of heavy section, strongly ribbed. It closed by gravity and was held in the open position by a clutch, which could be released by means of a powerful electromagnet controlled from the captain's bridge. In the event of accident, or at any time when it might be considered desirable, the captain or officer on duty could, by simply moving an electric switch, immediately close all these doors. The time required for the doors to close was between 25 and 30 seconds. Each door could also be closed from below by operating a hand lever fitted alongside the door. As a further precaution, floats were provided beneath the floor level, which, in the event of water accidentally entering any of the compartments, automatically lifted and thus released the clutches. thereby permitting the doors in that particular compartment to close if they had not already been dropped by any other means. These doors were fitted with cataracts which controlled the speed of closing. Due notice of closing from the bridge was given by a warning bell. A ladder or escape was provided in each boiler room, engine room, and similar watertight compartment in order that the closing of the doors at any time should not imprison the men working therein. The watertight doors on E deck were of horizontal pattern with wrought steel door plates. Those on F deck and the one aft on the orlop deck were of similar type, but had cast iron door plates of heavy section, strongly ribbed. Each of the between-deck doors and each of the vertical doors on the tank top level could be operated by the ordinary hand gear from the deck above the top of the watertight bulkhead, and from a position on the next deck above, almost directly above the door. To facilitate the quick closing of the doors, plates were affixed in suitable positions on the sides of the alleyways, indicating the positions of the deck plates, and a box spanner was provided for each door, hanging in suitable clips alongside the deck plate. Ship's side doors. Large side doors were provided through the side plating, giving access to passengers or crew's accommodation as follows. On the saloon D deck, on the starboard side, in the forward third-class open space, one baggage door. In way of the forward first-class entrance, two doors closed together on each side. On the upper E deck, one door each side at the forward end of the working passage. On the port side abreast the engine room, one door leading into the working passage. One door each side on the port and starboard sides aft into the forward second-class entrance. All the doors on the upper deck were secured by lever handles and were made watertight by means of rubber strips. Those on the saloon deck were closed by lever handles, but had no rubber. Accommodation ladder. One teak accommodation ladder was provided and could be worked on either side of the ship in the gangway door opposite the second-class entrance on the upper deck E. It had a folding platform and portable stanchions, hand rope, etc. The ladder extended to within 3 feet 6 inches of the vessel's light draft, and was stowed overhead in the entrance abreast the forward second-class main staircase. Its lower end was arranged so as to be raised and lowered from a davit immediately above. Masts and rigging. The vessel was rigged with 2 masts and fore and aft sails. The 2 pole masts were constructed of steel and stiffened with angle irons. The poles at the top of the mast were made of teak. A lookout cage constructed of steel was fitted on the foremast at a height of about 95 feet above the waterline. Access to the cage was obtained by an iron vertical ladder inside of the foremast with an opening at C deck and one at the lookout cage. An iron ladder was fitted on the foremast from the hounds to the masthead light. Life-saving appliances. Life buoys, 48 with beckets, were supplied of pattern approved by the Board of Trade. They were placed about the ship. Life belts. 3,560 life belts of the latest improved overhead pattern, approved by the Board of Trade, were supplied and placed on board the vessel, and there inspected by the Board of Trade. These were distributed throughout all the sleeping accommodation. Lifeboats. 20 boats in all were fitted on the vessel and were of the following dimensions and capacities. 14 wood lifeboats, each 30 feet long by 9 feet 1 inch broad by 4 feet deep, with a cubic capacity of 655.2 cubic feet, constructed to carry 65 persons each. Emergency boats. 1 woodcutter, 25 feet 2 inches long by 7 feet 2 inches broad by 3 feet deep, with a cubic capacity of 326.6 cubic feet, constructed to carry 40 persons. 1 woodcutter, 25 feet 2 inches long by 7 feet 1 inch broad by 3 feet deep, with a cubic capacity of 322.1 cubic feet, constructed to carry 40 persons. 4 Engelhard collapsible boats, 27 feet 5 inches long by 8 feet broad by 3 feet deep, with a cubic capacity of 376.6 cubic feet, constructed to carry 47 persons each, or a total of 11,327.9 cubic feet for 1,178 persons. The lifeboats and cutters were constructed as follows. The keels were of elm. The stems and stern posts were of oak. They were all clinker built of yellow pine, double fastened with copper nails, clinched over roofs. The timbers were of elm, spaced about 9 inches apart, and the seats pitch pine, secured with galvanized iron double knees. The buoyancy tanks in the lifeboats were of 18-ounce copper and of capacity to meet the Board of Trade requirements. The lifeboats were fitted with Murray's disengaging gear, with arrangements for simultaneously freeing both ends if required. The gear was fastened at a suitable distance from the forward and after ends of the boats to suit the davits. Lifelines were fitted round the gunwales of the lifeboats. The davit blocks were treble for the lifeboats and double for the cutters. They were of elm with lignum vitae roller sheaves and were bound inside with iron and had swivel eyes. There were manila rope falls of sufficient length for lowering the boats to the vessel's light draft, and when the boats were lowered, to be able to reach the boat winches on the boat deck. The lifeboats were stowed on hinged wood chocks on the boat deck by groups of 3 at the forward and 4 at the after ends. On each side of the boat deck, cutters were arranged forward of the group of 3 and fitted to lash outboard as emergency boats. They were immediately abaft the navigating bridge. The Engelhard collapsible lifeboats were stowed abreast of the cutters, 1 on each side of the ship and the remaining 2 on top of the officer's house, immediately abaft the navigating bridge. The boat equipment was in accordance with the Board of Trade requirements. Sails for each lifeboat and cutter were supplied and stowed in painted bags. Covers were supplied for the lifeboats and cutters, and a sea anchor for each boat. Every lifeboat was furnished with a special spirit boat compass and fitting for holding it. These compasses were carried in a locker on the boat deck. A provision tank and water beaker were supplied to each boat. Compasses were supplied as follows: 1 Kelvin standard compass with azimuth mirror on compass platform, 1 Kelvin steering compass inside of wheelhouse, 1 Kelvin steering compass on captain's bridge, 1 light card compass for docking bridge, 14 spirit compasses for lifeboats. All the ship's compasses were lighted with oil and electric lamps. They were adjusted by Messrs. C.J. Smith of Southampton on the passage from Belfast to Southampton and Southampton to Queenstown. Charts. All the necessary charts were supplied. Distress signals. These were supplied of number and pattern approved by Board of Trade, that is, 36 socket signals in lieu of guns, 12 ordinary rockets, 2 Manuel Holmes deck flares, 12 blue lights, and 6 lifebuoy lights. Pumping arrangements. The general arrangement of piping was designed so that it was possible to pump from any flooded compartment by 2 independent systems of 10-inch mains having cross connections between them. These were controlled from above by rods and wheels led to the level of the bulkhead deck. By these it was possible to isolate any flooded space together with any suctions in it. If any of these should happen accidentally to be left open and consequently out of reach, it could be shut off from the main by the wheel on the bulkhead deck. This arrangement was specially submitted to the Board of Trade and approved by them. The double bottom of the vessel was divided by 17 transverse watertight divisions, including those bounding the fore and aft peaks, and again subdivided by a center fore and aft bulkhead and 2 longitudinal bulkheads into 46 compartments. 14 of these compartments had 8-inch suctions, 23 had 6-inch suctions, and 3 had 5-inch suctions, connected to the 10-inch ballast main suction. 6 compartments were used exclusively for fresh water. The following bilge suctions were provided for dealing with water above the double bottom, viz. In number 1 hold 2 3.5-inch suctions, number 2 hold 2 3.5-inch and 2 3-inch suctions, bunker hold 2 3.5-inch and 2 3-inch suctions. The valves in connection with the forward bilge and ballast suctions were placed in the fireman's passage, the watertight pipe tunnel extending from number 6 boiler room to the after end of number 1 hold. In this tunnel, in addition to 2 3-inch bilge suctions, one at each end, there was a special 3.5-inch suction with valve rod led up to the lower deck above the load line, so as always to have been accessible should the tunnel be flooded accidentally. In number 6 boiler room, there were 3 3.5-inch, 1 4.5-inch, and 2 3-inch suctions. In number 5 boiler room, there were 3 3.5-inch, 1 5-inch, and 2 3-inch suctions. In number 4 boiler room, there were 3 3.5-inch, 1 4.5-inch, and 2 3-inch suctions. In number 3 boiler room, there were 3 3.5-inch, 1 5-inch, and 2 3-inch suctions. In number 2 boiler room, there were 3 3.5-inch, 1 5-inch, and 2 3-inch suctions. In number 1 boiler room, there were 2 3.5-inch, 1 5-inch, and 2 3-inch suctions. In the reciprocating engine room, there were 2 3.5-inch, 6 3-inch, 2 18-inch, and 2 5-inch suctions. In the turbine engine room, there were 2 3.5-inch, 3 3-inch, 2 18-inch, 2 5-inch, and 1 4-inch suctions. In the electric engine room, there were 4 3.5-inch suctions. In the storerooms above the electric engine room, there was 1 3-inch suction. In the forward tunnel compartment, there were 2 3.5-inch suctions. In the watertight flat over the tunnel compartment, there were 2 3-inch suctions. In the tunnel after compartment, there were 2 3.5-inch suctions. In the watertight flat over the tunnel after compartment, there were 2 3-inch suctions. Electrical installation, main generating sets. There were 4 engines and dynamos, each having a capacity of 400 kilowatts at 100 volts, and consisting of a vertical 3-crank compound forced lubrication enclosed engine of sufficient power to drive the electrical plant. The engines were direct coupled to their respective dynamos. These 4 main sets were situated in a separate watertight compartment about 63 feet long by 24 feet high, adjoining the after end of the turbine room at the level of the inner bottom. Steam to the electric engines was supplied from 2 separate lengths of steam pipes, connecting on the port side to the 5 single-ended boilers in compartment number 1 and 2 in compartment number 2, and on the starboard side to the auxiliary steam pipe which derives steam from the 5 single-ended boilers in number 1 compartment, 2 in number 2, and 2 in number 4. By connections at the engine room forward, bulkhead steam could be taken from any boiler in the ship. Auxiliary generating sets. In addition to the 4 main generating sets, there were 2 30-kilowatt engines and dynamos situated on a platform in the turbine engine room casing on saloon deck level, 20 feet above the water line. They were the same general type as the main sets. These auxiliary emergency sets were connected to the boilers by means of a separate steam pipe running along the working passage above E deck, with branches from 3 boiler rooms, numbers 2, 3, and 5, so that should the main sets be temporarily out of action, the auxiliary sets could provide current for such lights and power appliances as would be required in the event of emergency. Electric lighting. The total number of incandescent lights was 10,000, ranging from 16 to 100 candle power, the majority being of tantalum type, except in the cargo spaces and for the portable fittings, where carbon lamps were provided. Special dimming lamps of small amount of light were provided in the first-class rooms. Electric heating and power and mechanical ventilation. Altogether, 562 electric heaters and 153 electric motors were installed throughout the vessel, including 6 50 hundredweight and 2 30 hundredweight cranes, 4 3-ton cargo winches, and 4 15 hundredweight boat winches. There were also 4 electric passenger lifts, 3 forward of the first-class main entrance and 1 in the second-class forward entrance, each to carry 12 persons. Telephones. Loud-speaking telephones of Navy pattern were fitted for communication between the following: wheelhouse on the navigating bridge and the forecastle, wheelhouse on the navigating bridge and the lookout station on the crow's nest, wheelhouse on the navigating bridge and the engine room, wheelhouse on the navigating bridge and the poop, chief engineer's cabin and the engine room and numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 stokeholds. These were operated both from the ship's lighting circuit through a motor generator and alternatively by a standby battery, which by means of an automatic switch could be introduced in the circuit should the main supply fail. There was also a separate telephone system for intercommunication between a number of the chief officials and service rooms through a 50-line exchange switchboard. A number of the pantries and galleys were also in direct telephonic communication, wireless telegraphy. The wireless telegraphy system was worked by a Marconi 5-kilowatt motor generator. The house for the Marconi instruments was situated on the boat deck close to the bridge. There were 4 parallel aerial wires extended between the masts, fastened to light booms. From the aerials, the connecting wires were led to the instruments in the house. There were 2 complete sets of apparatus, one for the transmitting and one for receiving messages, the former being placed in a soundproof chamber in one corner of the wireless house. There was also an independent storage battery and coil in event of the failure of the current supply, which came from the ship's dynamos, submarine signaling. The submarine signal company's apparatus was provided for receiving signals from the submarine bells. Small tanks containing the microphones were placed on the inside of the hull of the vessel on the port and starboard sides below the water level, and were connected by wires to receivers situated in the navigating room on the port side of the officer's deckhouse. Various. The whistles were electrically actuated on the Willett Bruce system. The boiler room telegraphs, stoking indicators, rudder indicators, clocks, and thermostats were also electrical. The watertight doors were released by electric magnets. Emergency circuit. A separate and distinct installation was fitted in all parts of the vessel, deriving current from the 2 30-kilowatt sets above mentioned, so that in the event of the current from the main dynamos being unavailable, an independent supply was obtainable. Connected to the emergency circuit were above 500 incandescent lamps fitted throughout all passenger, crew, and machinery compartments at the end of passages and near stairways. Also on the boat deck to enable anyone to find their way from one part of the ship to the other. The following were also connected to the emergency circuit by means of changeover switches: 5 arc lamps, 7 cargo and gangway lanterns, Marconi apparatus, mast, side, and stern lights, and all lights on bridge, including those for captains, navigating, and chart rooms, wheelhouse, telegraphs, and Morse signaling lanterns, and 4 electrically driven boat winches. These latter, situated on the boat deck, were each capable of lifting a load of 1,500 weight at a speed of 100 feet per minute. Ventilating. There were 12 electrically driven fans for supplying air to the stokeholds, 6 electrically driven fans for engine and turbine room ventilation. There were fans for engine and boiler rooms. Machinery. Description. The propelling machinery was of the combination type, having 2 sets of reciprocating engines driving the wing propellers and a low-pressure turbine working the center propeller. Steam was supplied by 24 double-ended boilers and 5 single-ended boilers, arranged for a working pressure of 215 pounds per square inch. The turbine was placed in a separate compartment aft of the reciprocating engine room and divided from it by a watertight bulkhead. The main condensers, with their circulating pumps and air pumps, were placed in the turbine room. The boilers were arranged in 6 watertight compartments, the single-ended boilers being placed in the one nearest the main engines, the whole being built under Board of Trade survey for passenger certificate. Reciprocating engines. The reciprocating engines were of the 4-crank triple expansion type. Each set had 4 inverted direct-acting cylinders, the high pressure having a diameter of 54 inches, the intermediate pressure of 84 inches, and each of the 2 low-pressure cylinders of 97 inches, all with a stroke of 6 feet 3 inches. The valves of the high-pressure and intermediate cylinders were of the piston type, and the low-pressure cylinder had double-ported slide valves fitted with Stephenson link motion. Each engine was reversed by a Brown type of direct-acting steam and hydraulic engine. There was also a separate steam-driven high-pressure pump fitted for operating either or both of the reversing engines. This alternative arrangement was a standby in case of breakdown of the steam pipes to these engines. Turbine. The low-pressure turbine was of the Parsons reaction type, direct coupled to the center line of shafting and arranged for driving in the ahead direction only. It exhausted to the 2 condensers, placed one on each side of it. A shut-off valve was fitted in each of the adduction pipes leading to the condensers. An emergency governor was fitted and arranged to shut off steam to the turbine and simultaneously change over the exhaust from the reciprocating engines to the condensers should the speed of the turbine become excessive through the breaking of a shaft or other accident. Boilers. All the boilers were 15 feet, 9 inches in diameter, the 24 double-ended boilers being 20 feet long and the single-ended 11 feet 9 inches long. Each double-ended boiler had 6 and each single-ended boiler 3 furnaces with a total heating surface of 144,142 square feet and a grate surface of 3,466 square feet. The boilers were constructed in accordance with the rules of the Board of Trade for a working pressure of 215 pounds per square inch. They were arranged for working under natural draft, assisted by fans which blew air into the open stokehold, auxiliary steam pipes. The 5 single-ended boilers and those in boiler rooms numbers 2 and 4 had separate steam connections to the pipe supplying steam for working the auxiliary machinery, and the 5 single-ended boilers and the 2 port boilers in boiler room number 2 had separate steam connections to the pipe supplying steam for working the electric light engines. A cross connection was also made between the main and auxiliary pipes in the reciprocating engine room, so that the auxiliaries could be worked from any boiler in the ship. Steam pipes also were led separately from 3 of the boiler rooms, numbers 2, 3, 5, above the watertight bulkheads and along the working passage to the emergency electric light engines placed above the load line in the turbine room. Pipes were also led from this steam supply to the pumps in the engine room, which were connected to the bilges throughout the ship. Main steam pipes. There were 2 main lines of steam pipes led to the engine room with shut-off valves at 3 of the bulkheads. Besides the shut-off valves at the engine room bulkhead, a quick-acting emergency valve was fitted on each main steam pipe so that the steam could at once be shut off in case of rupture of the main pipe. Condensing plant and pumps. There were 2 main condensers having a combined cooling surface of 50,550 square feet, designed to work under a vacuum of 28 inches with cooling water at 60 degrees aft. The condensers were pear-shaped in section and built of mild steel plates. 4 gunmetal centrifugal pumps were fitted for circulating water through the condensers. Each pump had suction and discharge pipes of 29-inch bore and was driven by a compound engine. Besides the main C suctions, 2 of the pumps had direct bilge suctions from the turbine room, and the other 2 from the reciprocating engine room. The bilge suctions were 18 inches diameter. 4 of Weir's dual air pumps were fitted, 2 to each condenser, and discharged 2 feed tanks placed in the turbine engine room. Bilge and ballast pumps. The ship was also fitted with the following pumps: 5 ballast and bilge pumps, each capable of discharging 250 tons of water per hour. 3 bilge pumps, each of 150 tons per hour capacity. 1 ash ejector was placed in each of the large boiler compartments to work the ash ejectors and to circulate or feed the boilers as required. This pump was also connected to the bilges, except in the case of 3 of the boiler rooms, where 3 of the ballast and bilge pumps were placed. The pumps in each case had direct bilge suctions, as well as a connection to the main bilge pipe, so that each boiler room might be independent. The remainder of the auxiliary pumps were placed in the reciprocating and turbine engine rooms. 2 ballast pumps were placed in the reciprocating engine room with large suctions from the bilges direct and from the bilge main. 2 bilge pumps were also arranged to draw from bilges. 1 bilge pump was placed in the turbine room, and 1 of the hot saltwater pumps had a connection from the bilge main pipe for use in emergency. A 10-inch main ballast pipe was carried fore and aft through the ship with separate connections to each tank and with filling pipes from the sea connected at intervals for trimming purposes. The 5 ballast pumps were arranged to draw from this pipe. A double line of bilge main pipe was fitted forward of number 5 boiler room and aft of number 1. General. There were 4 elliptical-shaped funnels. The 3 forward ones took the waste gases from the boiler furnaces, and the after one was placed over the turbine hatch and was used as a ventilator. The galley funnels were led up this funnel. The uptakes by which the waste gases were conveyed to the funnels were united immediately above the watertight bulkhead, which separated the boiler rooms. All overhead discharge from the circulating pumps, ballast pumps, bilge pumps, etc., were below the deep load line, but above the light line. The boilers were supported in built steel cradles and were stayed to the ship's side and to each other athwart ships by strong steel stays. Built steel chocks were also fitted to prevent movement fore and aft. Silent blow-offs from the main steam pipes were connected direct to both condensers. Crew and passengers. When the Titanic left Queenstown on April 11th, the total number of persons employed on board in any capacity was 885. The respective ratings of these persons were as follows: Deck Department 66, Engine Department 325, Victualling Department 494. 8 bandsmen were included in the second-class passenger list. In the deck department, the master, Edward Charles Smith, held an extra master certificate. Chief Officer H.F. Wild held an ordinary master certificate. First Officer W.M. Murdoch held an ordinary master certificate. Second Officer C.H. Lightoller held an extra master certificate. Third Officer H.J. Pittman held an ordinary master certificate. Fourth Officer J.G. Boxall held an extra master certificate. Fifth Officer H.G. Lowe held an ordinary master's certificate. Sixth Officer J.P. Moody held an ordinary master's certificate. In the engine department were included the chief engineer and 7 senior and 17 assistant engineers. In the victualling department, there were 23 women employed. The total number of passengers on board was 1,316. Of these, first class, 180 male, 145 female, 325 total first-class passengers. Second class, 179 male, 106 female, 285 total second-class passengers. Third class, 510 male, 196 female, 706 total third-class passengers. Total passengers 1,316. Of the above, 6 children were in the first class, 24 children were in the second class, 79 children were in the third class, or 109 in all. About 410 of the third-class passengers were foreigners, and these, with the foreigners in the first and second class and in the victualling department, would make a total of nearly 500 persons on board who were presumably not English-speaking, so far as it is possible to ascertain. The disposition of the different classes of passengers and of the crew in the ship has already been described. In all, 2,201 persons were on board.